often do you feel that you are stuck? And what do you do to get unstuck? Well, that's the question for today. I'm going to talk about how to use clarity or how to regain clarity when you are stuck. Now, I wanted to say to you that I have this amazing framework, not because I don't have the framework, I actually do. And I'm going to show it to you. But the thing is, I can only show it to you on my phone. And reason why I can only do it on my phone is that for some reason my printer has decided to not print it. I've tried it in multiple ways, but we have to do with what we've got. So that's this. Now, in case you're wondering, but what does it say, Lexi? Well, there's a triangle, and in the middle it says clarity, because that's the topic. And if you look closely, you also see a question mark. That question mark is not just meant to be like, okay, how do we regain clarity again? But it's also about one of the things that you can do. And well, maybe especially because it's about what is it that you want to achieve? What is it that you want to pick back up? That's what the whole clarity thing is about. So it's about what you want to achieve, like right now. Maybe those are new things, but well, maybe it's also time to look back on the things that we haven't finished the way that we wanted to do them, and think about how are we gaining momentum to actually finish them. So basically this is about finishing the year strong, and that means that we also reflect back on things. So if I look at the pillars that I put on there, then the first thing that I wrote down is overview. So I think overview is the most basic thing. So when you see me writing down, this is what I wrote down in order to go live today. And I also looked at my Instagram post. So whenever I look at my Instagram post, it gives me an idea, like what was the week about. So when I started doing this Friday Night Lives, the first thing I said is I'm going to look back on the week and what the week had, what the week was about and how I got inspired. So my last Friday Night Live was about moving forward with limited options. Oh, look at that. The printer is working. And now the question, of course, is he going to do a full page or is it going to be half a page? The thing is, there it's going again for the second time. I don't know why the printer needed waking up. Well, it sounds like twice things got printed, actually. So, oh, here's the third time. So now it's in full force. But, well, I guess I'm going to show you on here anyway. So hopefully we're done with 3 times printing. Now, getting back to the week, the moving forward with limited options had to do with a number of things, but primarily it was inspired by me not being able to walk the way that I could before I went to the US. So it's always going up and down on my end. And I wanted to talk about, but what if you want to do certain things, you have certain projects in mind, but you are limited on resources, whether it's that you don't have the right support, you don't have the right network, you don't have enough money, or literally not the right equipment, but maybe there are also other things at play. And I wrote a blog post about that last Monday, still being inspired by the Friday Night Live, which was which was good. And then when we go to one of the things that I posted as a quote, it was keep going, especially when things get hard. And then I went back again to, you can actually see it, to last week's framework. Now, basically the whole week, or a large part of the week, had to do with the whole theme around, okay, yes, things might be challenging, but how do we continue on? And one of the things that I did is I actually went to see someone who is from the company, it's a company from Iceland. And well, they came up with 2 new braces. Well, they were actually the same ones, but different in size. And they were like, well, maybe that's something for you. And I was like, yeah, that might be it. I have no clue how it's going to work out, but it felt like secure and safe. And hopefully that makes it a little bit easier to, do the things that I used to do before I actually left for the US. For now, I'm using my old braces. I also talked to my physical therapist, like, okay, how does that work, walking with braces when you, not the braces with crutches, when you're dealing with 2 bad legs. So basically I was used to putting crutches down at the same time, supporting one leg. And then I realized, oh, well, now it's my right leg, so I need to shift to my right leg. And then my left leg said, no way, that's not what we're going to do. So it basically, some things are about adjusting, but the whole thing, when we talk about clarity, is yes, of course, I want clarity in how to move on, literally, but also how to move on, as in, where did I get stuck? Now, when I made the description for this live, I wrote a little something which was inspired by Brandon Burchard's Daily Fire. So if you're wondering what Daily Fire is, he's got this app called Growth Day. And if you want to be part of Growth Day, then let me know. And then I'll put a link in here. And you can use the link to register for, I think it's 3 months of Growth Day. Anyway, what he talks about, and I've heard him say so, well, not millions of times, not thousands of times, but a lot of times, about, okay, how do you want to start the week? So I actually have a reminder on my phone, which says, let me see what it says literally. It says, what's my test for the week? Take small incremental steps and grow myself into greatness. Put some experiments on the board. Well, the board, it's what you see there behind me. It's always a bit confusing when you're looking at yourself on the screen, like, okay, which side was it again? But yeah, that's called a battle board. So there are things on there with dates and when you want to have things done. If you wonder about battle boards, just just type in Brandon Burchard and battle board. Anyway, today is Friday. So on Friday, we look back on the week. And well, this being Friday Night Live, I was like, okay, so literally let's go and look back on the week. Hence why I talked about what I posted in Instagram. And there were also some other things actually on Instagram that I posted out there. So one of the things is I did a coaching training, a live training about how your story can help others. So basically it has to do with if you would like to write a book or you want to get a PDF out there or an ebook, whatever. You or you just want to talk to people, for instance, when I'm in the airport, a lot of people usually ask, hey, what's going on? What happened? Um, I talked about it a few times when I was in the US, and that's nothing new, especially when people are dealing with similar problems. They also always want to know what happened. So there might be a story, but the story can have a message, and it's most powerful actually when it has a message. That doesn't mean that you have to start with a message in mind, but it does have to do with how do things come across. And one of the things that I always aim for is to tell a story with a positive note. So one of the things that I actually said underneath my post is, this can happen, which had to do with, things which are good, things then going, in a downward spiral, then going back up again, and again in a downward spiral, which has to do with my mobility in this case. And, every time I will tell people, but the good thing is I can stand on 2 feet. And, not having been able to do so for such a long time, I'm so grateful that even with the setback that I'm experiencing right now, I can actually stand on 2 feet. I can just stand on 2 feet, not needing any crutches. So yes, I do tend to lean against the wall, at some point, or find a place to sit. But if needed, I can stand, and that's nice. So what I try to do when it comes to a story is I want to come to with something like, okay, so what can you hold on to? And that's also my goal when you talk about the Friday Night Live. So the Friday Night Live, on the one hand, is about looking back on the week. And there is one more item that I haven't discussed. But it's also about looking back on, okay, what have I done? What did I set out to do? Now, like I said, one of my goals is to teach people or inspire people or both, support people, especially when it comes to speaking up and speaking out. So when I talk about your story can help others, well, that has everything to do, of course, with the whole speaking up and speaking out. If only because sometimes, no, not sometimes, when you're dealing with situations which are uncommon for you because you have never been in that situation before, or you are in a situation and you knock on all these doors and you don't get any answers, then it's so nice actually to be able to contact someone who does know what you need to do and where you need to go. And one of the reasons that I actually shared the post about the braces, and yes, there are multiple ones, but the ones where you actually see the braces, every time I look at it, it's like, well, it looks like some military outfit or something. It's kind of funny. But yes, when you look at the story, then at some point I say, those things can happen. Like I said, about things going good, bad, good, you know. And then I get into one thing, and I've been thinking about this, like, am I going to talk about it and write it down or not? So actually there are two versions, and basically you saw the adjusted censored version. What I've learned when I'm writing things down, and please keep in mind that this is still about clarity, is that it's so important to write a rough version and then look at it again and think, okay, but is this the version with all the emotions, all the frustrations that I want to get out to the world? Or do you want to deliver a message? And then we get back to the story, and what's the message that you want to get across? And when I was writing it down, I was like, okay, the message here has to do with, what if you are not understood? What if people just, they don't take you seriously? And well, I probably could do an entire life about people who are not heard by other companies, whatever it is. And well, when I talked about the braces, I talked about what happened. And so I got a little bit back into the first day of my flight, which was total mayhem. From the moment it started, and actually that part is kind of funny. I think they want to ship me off to Singapore while I was going to LA. They got me on the plane. I'm not sure if that's where my suitcase got smashed, but at the end of that day, I got my suitcase, and there was a big, 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 big dent in there. Now that was part one. Part two was when there was the connecting flight and I had to walk next to the wheelchair. And that's actually what got the better of me. I wasn't wearing my braces because I was doing so good. And well, the agreement is, when I don't need them, I don't use them. But I do use them preventive sometimes, in certain situations where I'm like, oh, it could be get me a bit hard, or I could get in a situation where my knees could do this. Then let's be smart. And well, what I didn't count on was that there were not enough people to push us. So that was part two, that I had to walk next to the wheelchair. And part three was when I arrived in LA. My suitcase was on a later flight, and well, it was at a different terminal than said, because I had to wait for like an hour. I wanted to go to Starbucks, which I did. I got a free tumbler there. I'm sure it wasn't meant to be like that, but I did appreciate it because it was in that nice color of blue. And well, I kept walking back and forth because the terminal at the end was Terminal 4, and well, Starbucks was on the other side. And of course, I had to be at Terminal 5, and I already had passed that one, going to Starbucks and going back. And then all of a sudden they said, oh yeah, I'm sorry, it's going to Terminal 5. Well, thank you. And then something else. Anyway, since my suitcase was damaged, but I didn't realize it until I'd taken the shuttle to get an Uber, and then had to take the shuttle back to the airport. That was way too much. I didn't get any support getting to the shuttle bus. There was also no support when it came from going from one terminal to the other one, or to Starbucks. And of course, I was already done by that time. I was really done. I'd been traveling for like almost 24 hours. I'd been walking a lot. So it was not good. So I talked about that. And then the response from the one I called, because people said to me, you need to call customer services. So I did. She said, well, a lot of people use those wheelchairs who don't need them. Who are you to decide so? This was because I said there were 2 people for 4 wheelchairs with 5 people who needed them. And then she made this remark like, wow, you sound like a strong person. You'll get back in running in no time. And I was like, well, I've never been able to run in my life. So I don't know, for very, very short distances I can, but there's always a risk when I do so, because of the hypermobility in my joints. And I was like, that's not good. It's things can happen. And am I happy with things happening? No, but it can. And I can blame others for the things which are happening when, in certain situations, especially unexpected situations, I can act in a certain way, but it can happen that others do not. So that's what I mean with, it's you cannot always blame people for the bad things happening to you. Sometimes things just happen. And well, when I was thinking about that, the number of times that things happened, first to my ankle and then later to my left knee and now to my right knee, I was like, yeah, of course I could say something about it, but do I want to? But in this case, because of the response back from the airline company, I was like, I'm not happy with this. I'm not happy with this. And I talked to others about it, and they actually had the same story. Like, hey, we go to someone, we talk about it, we say we need your help, and we're getting brushed off. And some of those people said to me, well, don't you think we already did everything possible? Don't you think that by the time that we come knocking on doors, that we are desperate because we do not know where to go elsewhere? And I was like, yeah, and those things need to be shared too. And I'm not talking about airline companies. Like I said, it could be that you're going to your local municipality for support, and one can say one thing and then the next one can say something else. And this is a world where there are so many people and we are not the same. I mean, just take the difference between people who are neurodivergent versus the one who seem to fit in and understand everything. And we can say the same thing about people who can walk, and for whom walking is normally, and then for those people who cannot walk and have to struggle walking. So when you talk about inclusion, I guess that describes it best, about the difference in people and their possibilities, but also about how they think about things. So, yes, with the world now becoming a place where things need to be done as quick as possible with the least amount of costs, well, that can be at the expense of quality, and we want to make things generic. But what if you, for instance, go to school as a kid and you are either a little slower because you think a little bit differently, or you are a little smarter, and as a result, you do not know how to actually do homework because you never had to do it until you get to high school, and then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, what's happening? And of course, it can also lead to various things when you're still in elementary school. So, talking about that, it's good for people to express themselves. So getting back to the story, you want to get something across with that story. You want to share a message, but it's of course way more powerful if you not only share a message, but you also share a strategy. You come up with a solution, something which works for you. And then we get back to the framework, because basically what I do when I create that framework is that I I write about, okay, so what is it that I want to get across? And I come up with a theme, clarity in this case. And I also come up with some ideas like, okay, what is helping me to get clarity? Now, if you're a little squeamish, do me a favor, just look away. But I'm going to do something because one of my contact lenses is shifting in and out. So I'm going to do this. You're not going to watch. And that helps me quite a bit. So, yeah, it's live, and I don't believe in editing all the things out, so I'm not going to. Now, let's keep fingers crossed that I don't have to take the other one out, because if I do, I'm not seeing anything anymore. But then again, I don't have to. I just have to look at the camera, and I guess I can guess where the camera is, even when I only can see this much. Now, getting back to the framework and about stories and strategies and also sharing those things. When I was thinking about what do I want to share when it comes to this Friday night live, well, we already got back to the topics that I discussed. So I look back on my Instagram feed, and well, one of the things that I actually didn't mention, I posted that yesterday, is this is it's about the team helping the new one out, and also basically about how teams can really work together even when they're individuals, that they still are like, okay, this needs to be done, we want the best result possible, let's go do it. And it's one of the things that actually, when we talk about clarity, well, it popped up. And why? Because one of the things that I realized is I want to use stuff that I took pictures of. So that sounds a little bit weird, but what I mean is I've got a lot of footage from when I was in the US, and I wanted to get that across. So when people started commenting about two actors working together and what that would look like, I was like, hey, I got footage from that one. I've taken pictures. And I was like, okay, but what's the message? And then it was like, hey, it's so interesting when a team, especially old timers who've done the job, who are seasoned as in experience, help out the new person. So I had two pictures where you see how one of the experienced actors is helping the new one out. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And well, I related to some other things as well, and I was like, yeah, that feels good to post about that part. And that brought me back to the whole clarity thing. So one of the things that I put on there on the top above the question mark is picking things back up. Now, some of you may know that I tend to do clarity challenges, and I'm still planning on doing one, especially since I want people to finish the year strong and start it with a boost the next year. It's like, yeah, every time I get back from the US, I do a clarity challenge. But when I was there, actually prior to going there, but also when I was there, I had the Chicago Courage Challenge. Now, in case you're thinking Chicago, oh, that has to do, everything is the city. Chicago is an acronym. And yes, the end result was going to be to take people on a trip through Chicago and coach them at the same time, because I love Chicago. The Chicagoans are so nice, so kind. And then, of course, there are stories everywhere, behind Chicago. And if you want to know about the stories, then, the best way to do it is actually to go visit the Fire Museum of Greater Chicago, and to go to the Fire Academy. And that might seem a little weird, but the things which were very important for Chicago were also the things where things didn't go, and because things didn't turn out very well, a lot of casualties and a lot of damage, they had to change things. And it's kind of interesting to actually see how that works. So, yes, since I got back, I already started posting about Chicago. I also posted about the US when I was in the US, but I'm still posting about the US because I'm like, hey, the last couple of years, I posted something every now and then, but I've got so much more footage, and it would be so cool to share that too. So, when it comes to what is worthwhile picking back up, it's about, okay, what did you say that you wanted to do? And what haven't you done, or what did you start, but you haven't finished this yet? And then we get back full circle to what I said at the beginning, that when I was listening to Brendan, he referred to, okay, what is your beginning of the week? And now it's the end of the week. Well, depends, of course, which days you work, but he calls it Friday finishers. And I was like, yeah, that's why I'm writing every day. And that's the reason why when you look at this framework on the bottom, it says writing. And it's in gray because the writing actually plays a very important part in a number of things. So besides picking back things up, it's also about overview, looking back on the week. And it also has to do with evaluating, like, hey, what is happening? So besides writing down at the beginning of the week and at the end of the week, like, hey, what have I done? Or looking back at the beginning of the month, like, hey, what did I set out to do and have I done so? It's one of the things that I also do is I write every day on my phone. It's just easiest to do it on my phone. Well, almost every day. So it varies from the things that I've done up till, the description for this live, for instance, that's on there too. And what I noticed is by writing things down, it helps you figure out, hey, I was planning on doing this and I haven't done it. So that's on one side. It's the overview. So that's over there. Yeah, over there. And then there's the part which has to do with evaluate. So looking back, like, hey, did I actually do it or didn't I do it? Now, by writing things down, not only at the beginning or the end, but also when I am not sure what to do, or by doing it at the end of the day, I confront myself with the things I said I was going to do, but I didn't do. And combined with that, when you become aware, then you can also talk to other people about it. So that's one of the things that I actually did. I started talking to one of my friends about it, and I said, prior to going to the US, doing the Chicago Courage Challenge, I hit you up like every day. Every day I told you what my progress was. And I actually stopped doing that when I was in the US. So we had a lot of contact when I was there, but I didn't send her what I actually had been doing like every day. And it was because of the change of environment. So when I saw her this week, we talked about it, and I said, do you remember that I used to send you like what I had done? I said, I stopped doing it and I'm going to do it again. So by writing things down, becoming aware, and hence becoming aware of what you have done and what you haven't done, it also makes it easier to reach out to people and talk about it. Like, hey, I said I was going to do this, but I actually didn't. So it gives you new perspective. And writing things down also means that you can be honest with yourself about what is it that I said I was going to do, I didn't do, and why didn't I do it? So for me, this week or last weekend after the Friday Night Live was also about getting my accountancy, so the quarterly VAT that's for taxes. Well, I needed to pay that, so I needed to make sure that my accountant had all the stuff. And I'm getting better at it nowadays, so I know that I can be over and done with it within the weekend. But I've noticed that during the week, I was a little bit like, I need to do it. And it wasn't until I said to myself, you know what, don't worry about it. You're going to do it this weekend. Call them prior to the weekend. Ask them if it's okay that they get it after the weekend. I did. So on Monday, they got the stuff, what they needed. And during the time before the weekend, it was basically off my mind. I was like, okay. So I focused on other things. And one of the things that I'm in the process of doing is I'm reducing my Lego boxes here. So there are some things. One is actually in the background. It's a tiny house, but I still want to make it bigger, make it fancier, but I also want to get the fire station out there and then some. Which means that I bought a whole lot of stuff that I'm not going to use. I'm maybe using certain elements, but that's about it. Now, the good news is the friend I was talking about, she has 2 kids. And, well, they like to play with Lego. And whenever their friends come over, they're like, oh, my God, you've got so much Lego. Wonder why. So I realized last week, like, okay, so there are a couple of things that I need to do. The taxes, the Lego, which is sort of like an ongoing thing, but it's nice to, I think once or twice a week, I drop by with a number of boxes. But there was also something else, which has to do with the whole website marketing opt-in stuff. And every Monday and Friday, I'm reminded, because the goal is to actually refer people to a link like, okay, I've got something for you to download, whether it's the framework or maybe it's something else. And before going to the US, I was well on my way. There were some things that I still needed to finish. And now that when I was in the US, I actually did a lot of stuff when it came to working on those opt-in pages as well. Why did I do it over there? Because I like to sit outside. I bring my iPad with me. I sit down at a table. I've got my notebook, and there I go. And there are a lot of places where you can sit. And I remember, for instance, in Chicago, that someone showed me, like, well, here's a place, there are all these tables, and you can just sit there. You don't necessarily need to order anything because there are so many different stores where you can order from, and this is not necessarily appointed to one store. And I was like, oh, that's nice. So I can get myself something, and then I sit down, and then I just go to work. Other times I would go and find, for instance, a Starbucks where I would sit down. But ever since I got back, I haven't done so. Now, one of the things that I actually do every once in a while is that same friend where I go over is sometimes she has to work, sometimes I have to work. So I've done lives from her home. And one of the things is that I sometimes say to her, okay, I need to get things done. So we discuss certain things, but I might also just work on the spot. She does her thing, I do my thing, and, things get done, things get out there. But what I like to do the best, basically, it was good weather, sitting outside. Well, that's here impossible when you're back here because it's autumn and it looks kind of lovely with all the nice colors. And the colors do look good, the nice dark red leaves and everything. I have to say, it's really pretty this autumn over here. Normally it's like gray and wet and cold, and it's not that cold, so it's very doable, and there's not too much rain, so it's kind of nice to go outside. So the question, of course, is what can I do to get back to what needs to be done? And then we get back to that one thing, which is, what am I going to pick back up? Which is at the top, remember? And sometimes to get going, to create momentum, and then we get back to the bottom part, is I need to start writing. Why haven't I done it yet? What is holding me back? What am I afraid of? What is it? Maybe I didn't have the time. So what are the reasons that I didn't go and do the stuff? But it also has to do with sorting out what are the most important things. Like, for instance, this week, I had to get the stuff for the taxes out there. And, I also have to make sure, because of safety reasons, that there's less storage here. So that's what I'm working on. That's the Lego story, by the way. And then, of course, there's the stuff that I have finished for like 75-80%, but I didn't finish it all the way. And those are the things that I'm like, okay, what am I going to do about it? And of course, we can easily forget about it because, I did the Chicago Cars Challenge. I recorded the modules, and then I found out that a lot of people said, this is more like a 7 to 12 week course than it is a 7-day course. So they basically couldn't finish it in the time that I expected them to do it, which was like a week, maybe 2 weeks. And when I became aware of this, I was like, okay, so I need to change a few things. And then going back to the system, I was like, okay, so this 12-week course, if I want to offer it, it consists of a number of things. And, well, that's where things get complex. And that's why it's good to get back to the basics and writing things down. Because I realized that when they ask for, say, for instance, a PDF, so I could say, I want this PDF to get out there. But in addition, I'm going to write down 3 steps and explain a little bit more. So I've got multiple frameworks. Some are with more pictures compared to others. But I also, I don't just want to get a framework out there. I also want to explain what the steps are. And the moment that I put it in the system, it's like, okay, so what's happening afterwards? Email, custom email, a custom thank you page. Do you want them to go and get another offer? And that's when things go haywire. So when I talk about clarity, it also has to do with what's the bare minimum that you want to get out there. So prior to this live, I was looking at things and I was like, okay, so if I just want to get one PDF out there, then what is keeping me from doing so? I mean, isn't it like you upload the file, you get a link, and off we go? And then I was looking at it and I was like, yeah, but they expect so many other things. And that's the same with the 12-week course. When you want to combine offers, it's like, oh, okay, so this product is in there, that's in there, that's in there. But what now? And honestly, what I had the most problems with was the whole email chain. Why a chain? Because it's not one email. It's usually a number of emails, say for 7 days in a row, or maybe it could be 10 days. But you want to write a number of emails. And that's where I always get stuck. And then we get back to what I said earlier. When I was in the US, I would go sit on the terrace and then I would do my thing. I either would start writing things down by hand in my notebook, or, I would straight away work on it. And especially when you're already in there, you're doing it one day, then it's so much easier to continue on. And prior to going to the US, like I said, I posted one of my friends like every day. I sent her something. I've been working on this, working on that. And I noticed that, just checking out where do things not go the way they should. And then we get back to the overview, but also about reflecting. So the overview is basically, what do I want to work on and what have I done? And then the reflection is basically about, okay, but why this? Why didn't this work? And well, talking about that part, when I started sending those messages, one of the things that I actually noticed was, okay, I remember going to this system, it's called Kajabi. And at first I was like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. It's way too complicated. And then I realized, well, actually, it's not that complicated. Well, I'm not going to say it's easy necessarily, but it's once you've seen it, then it becomes easier to get back at it. And like I said, every Monday and Friday, I'm like, oh, yeah, I need to keep working on this. I need to get that out there because I still want people to be able to, get a free PDF or something else. And I was like, yeah, I need to get back to it. But because, the habit sort of, there was a habit that I got started prior to going to the US. I sort of continued it on when I had the time, when I was there. But then when I got back, nothing, because I had other priorities. And now I'm like, okay, so how do we get back to it? And by writing about it, I realized, oh, that's the thing. I had other things to do. And it's about picking back up where I left off. And the same emotions I had when I started doing it, they are basically in the background, but they're still there. And I was wondering this week, when I'd done my taxes and some other stuff, like, why am I not working on this? So I had all these other distractions, not necessarily useful distractions. But, everything seemed to be better than doing that stuff. And I was like, that's distraction. That's literally distraction, because apparently I know I need to do it, but I don't want to do it. So You know, your mind is so good, your subconscious mind, coming up with all these excuses why you shouldn't do it. And that's why it's so important to actually keep going, even if it's only like for 1 minute. Because when you keep going, your brain knows that you're going to act on it. Whereas if you stop doing it, your brain knows that you're not reliable, you know? So for me, when it comes to clarity, at the bottom, like I said, there is the part of the writing. You also need to make sure that you know what's the most important thing. And going straight to the top, also think back about what you have started, but maybe not entirely finished, but what could get you back in the flow again and create momentum, and what the best place is for you to do it so you feel like motivated. And yeah, of course, write down what it is that you know worked for you and what didn't work for you. So one of the things that I wrote down before going to sleep is, hey, I need to work on my opt-in page, and I didn't do it. Why didn't I do it? Well, that question was answered when I was looking at it again, because I was like, if it's just about one PDF, how hard is it to get a link out there? And then I realized, oh yeah, that's it. You know, whenever I go to the page and I look at it, the uploading is not a problem. But then they all of a sudden want all this other information and they have all these other questions, and it's so easy to get distracted. So I was like, okay. And hence why I said to my friend when I saw her again this week, I'm going to change things. I am going to send you my progress, like what have I done? I'm going to show you, because I knew that it worked. Now, the other thing, and I talked about that too, is, but that didn't work out this week. I was like, you know, I'm going to some place, whether it's a restaurant where they have good food, or whether it's going to a place where they have like a nice latte or something, and I'm just going to write. And every time I thought, now I have time, then something else happened. And well, there was basically no time left to go do it. I did, however, create a list, and that was a while ago, with my coach about what can I do at which time in order to get the stuff out there. So then we get back to flow and momentum. So what creates momentum? How do you get in the flow? And that can be linked to certain locations. And well, for me, it's, you know, the activity of getting somewhere, you know, having a latte, maybe a little bit to eat. And, you know, meanwhile, I'll be writing. There are some sounds in the background, and sometimes I hear conversations, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, you know, and then my ears are focused on that one. Sometimes I might actually say something. I always ask if they don't mind. Usually it's okay. So, especially when I'm on the terraces, I've actually never heard that people were like, well, mind your own business. So that's good. But you know, the circumstances, if they are not there, then you need to come up with a safety plan, a fallback plan. What is the next thing that you're going to do? Now, taking all this into consideration, I know what I need to work on to finish the year strong. And that's not only getting the Chicago Courage Challenge out there the way that I want to, it also has to do with the Christmas trip that I want to get out there. And, you know, some simple things like PDFs that people can use. Now, I don't want to get like a zillion PDFs in there. What I do want is something to get in there which is usable for a number of people. And, you know, I might even try an ad. I'm running an ad on Instagram or on Facebook, just seeing, hey, how does this work? Now, I'm going to add one component to it. And when we talk about reflecting on things, how about if we don't only look at the past, but we also look at the future and realizing that there might be a future version out there who did do it, who got successful? What would that person say to you? Now, if you take that into consideration, like what you could be capable of and seeing how that would work for you, you can get so much information. It's kind of funny when you start writing what can come up. The thing about it is that you don't want to be stressed out. You don't want to be like, I need to get this, that, and the other out there. But it's more like, okay, I'm just going to go writing and I'll just see what comes up. And then it's like there's a conversation with yourself going on. You can also say that you're basically coaching yourself. But it's about more than just, I didn't do this. It's also about the question, so if I didn't do this, then why didn't I do this? And when I'm going to do it. So for me, knowing that I've had a busy couple of days, and as a result, I wasn't capable of going to the places that I wanted to. I knew, like, okay, well, those things can happen. So what is the next best thing? And the other thing was that because I'd written it down, I was like, okay, so why didn't it happen again? Was that really only because of those circumstances, or did I come up with other things that I needed to do? So what were the excuses for it? And because I'd written it down, then, whenever you're doing something boring, like being on your bike, doing the laundry, so repetitive actions, basically, those questions have a possibility to come to the surface with answers, and you might be surprised. So hence why I said, reflect back on things, write things down. And when you make that overview, there's a guarantee that you can start adding things to that list. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, hang on, I did that too, and I stopped doing it. Why? So I want you to think about how you want to finish the year strong, and what's that thing that you started but you didn't finish it. And is there something that you said you were going to start up multiple times, but for some reason you didn't go around to it? Write about it. It's not that someone needs to judge you, with a grade or something. It's about being honest to yourself and say that you could talk to your future version, and your future version would have done it, or maybe a role model if that's easier. Your future version, of course, can be a role model too. What would they say to you? And see if you can implement that. And if you don't, then write about why you didn't do it. And you can learn so much from yourself just by doing so. Well, having talked about all of this, remember what I said? I want to do a Christmas trip, which is prior to Christmas. I know what I want to offer, but now I also need to get it out there. That's my assignment. And once I can get it done, then I'll make sure to post it. But in the meanwhile, if you want to, there's always the weekly group coaching training. And then we get back to that one thing. Lexi, what was that link again? And then I have to say, I don't know. So hit me up. So always make sure that there's a backup plan. But yes, be honest with yourself. What did you say you were going to start doing, or what haven't you finished, which might actually be kind of easy to finish and to wrap up? And what's one of the things that's the most important things that you need to do? And what kind of excuses did you get? Think about that. Let me know. Leave a comment.